So, welcome. According to my watch, it's 30 minutes past. Erstmal vielen Dank, dass ihr in der Mittagspause euch die Zeit genommen habt, hier vorbeizukommen, weil ich weiß, dass dem einen oder anderen vielleicht das nicht gehabte Essen nachher später leichter im Magen liegt. I'm not going to switch back to English because that's what I'm supposed to do here today. So, welcome to the show. Thanks a lot for stopping by. My topic today is money. I know it's boring, I know it makes the world go round, it's just something that is nice to have and something to be around. And just on who I am, why do I think that I'm entitled to talk about money? And if you Google me, and I did this today, I did this self-Googling thing, and so I came up with page number 1, and you will find I have a split personality. So the one thing is I ran a couple of startups, then I ran a couple of companies that were related to media, and specifically on large media companies like printing, magazine businesses, but also television and radio stations, specifically with the content strategy. So also I was co-author of the content and technology paper that was published here as part of Angela Merkel's IT Gipfel. The second thing, you're going to see the wild side of me. I've been a musician for about like 30 years. So you're going to find some of those pictures as well. Again, been doing this for about like 30 plus years, playing multiple instruments for a couple of years, and also just released my latest concept album, basically it's called A Quarter Late, which refers to the fact that I really should have done this 25 years ago. Anyways, so we talk about money. That's what we want to talk about. And we're going to talk about numbers. So money, how it's made and distributed in today's music industry, and I try to kind of leave the shade of being vague and give you a couple of concrete numbers to work with. And the next thing I'm going to be working on is the numbers and how they will develop going forward. Then the next things I'm going to be covering is like strategies, how you can make sure that you're riding the wave instead of being kind of overwhelmed and put down to the ground by it. And the last thing is I'm going to be talking about the future, kind of what's next at the very end. So let me start with a couple of numbers, and this is a slide. Most of the slides, by the way, you will find the sources at the bottom of it if you want to check like where I got my information from. And some of them is internal research that we did at Vastly Underrated. So what you see here is the golden age of the CD here. I'm not sure if this is eye candy for you in the back. I know, I apologize for it, but it didn't really have a big screen here. So the thing is that everybody here, basically this is where the big peak is. Everybody repurchased the music that they already got on LP, and they just got it on CD again, and this kind of was a golden age of CD production. Then you see the little peak here in the back, which is streaming and digital services right now, and digital content. And again, this is kind of taken off, and obviously the major labels and the musicians are hoping that the story is going to repeat itself with the big peak and the golden age that they see is on the past. So that's the past, how's the future? This again is a chart that was published by GfK in Germany. And by the way, I have to apologize to our English speakers here because I had a choice of either translating those charts, potentially falsifying it, or leaving them in German just from I think the charts are international, right? But it's like the questions like the headlines that I have in here. How do I actually deal with that? And I left them in German just to make sure that we have a trace of data. Anyway, you see the streaming is coming up, the physical sales are going down, no news there. One thing that I did is a little bit of an exercise, and I encourage you to do the same, and I bet you already did. There's a great book out there called All You Need to Know About the Music Industry. It's written by a lawyer, and it basically contains all contract structures that are used today in the recording industry and the label industry. And when you go down, you will find that if you produce a gold record, after all the deductions for, obviously you have units sold, then you have things like breakage, you have things like spoilage, you have things like shipping costs that is deducted from that as well, which is coming really from the physical side of the history of the data. So anyway, the net here is that on a 100K CD, which is a gold album, which is about like 120 albums in Germany that make that every year, the artist is going to remain, this is CD business, not streaming business. The CD business remain with 25 to 73K, depending on like how their contract is actually shaped and how well they develop that. So if you just put streaming on top of that, you're going to get to numbers that are going to get to a little later. The other thing is the revenue share of the CD, which is also an interesting revised chart by the VUT in Germany. Actually shows you the revenue distribution. Net of all of this, why am I showing this? Number one is I want to give you some kind of a background of the things I'm going to be talking about. Number two, even more importantly, this is not a digital business at this point of time. And I'm going to show you like what the cost structure of the participants on the market are looking like. So I have two very basic business school slides for you, and I apologize for that, but I just need them to kind of lead you through my thinking here. So this slide is something you probably all saw. In order to understand what the change of the digital business is going to do to your business, to the physical business, or today's business of the industry, you need to understand like how's the value chain. And very basic, I'm not going to spend much time on this, is you create a product, then you market the product, then obviously, hopefully the product is going to be visible enough that some people go out and basically buy it. Then you got to collect the money, then you do some research like what was successful, was not successful, and then you create your product, and the whole cycle turns again and turns again and turns again. How is digital changing this? Well, basically what digital does, it drives down cost. It drives up speed, and it drives a broad access channel. And I'm going to cover this in a second here as well. Production costs. You all know, like, by the time that Alan Parsons mixed and recorded Pink Floyd, that was something that was in the hundreds of thousands, if not in the millions, for Dark Side of the Moon. Right now, when you look at the digital production cost, we see a couple of tracks in the streaming charts that have been actually developed and done on an iPhone. So the production cost is tremendously coming down through things like Logic, through things like Cubase and other recording techniques. Marketing cost is tremendously going down. The reason why this is that typically, in order to get people, to make people aware of your product, you had to send out CDs, you had to write promotional material, you had to send out brochures and all that stuff. You don't need that crap anymore. However, the cost has gone up as well. And the reason why that is, because today you're competing with a lot more tracks out there than you used to do. So today's competition for you on streaming is not just Northern Germany, it's not just Germany, it's not just Europe, it's not just the world, it's actually the history of all music that has ever been published and is now available as part of the catalog, as part of the streaming service that you're streaming on. Delivery is zero because you Spotify it or you Deezer it or whatever. Collection is zero as well because everything is done for you through the aggregators. The research, again, costs drop tremendously, so your A&R costs today, when you run a label or a record company, is probably going to be down because the people in A&R that you have are not as much as you used to have. But the digital research you have to do in order to find out, like, where's your track listened to? Like, what are the opportunities? So, like, where is it that I have most traction? And what are the related artists that I can leverage in order to market my product? This has gone up because you need less work, but you need more specialized work. It's got to be more digital. So, the net of this is, and this is just the groundwork here, is the variable cost goes away. It doesn't matter whether you sell 1,000 or 1,000,000. It doesn't matter. So, throwing things at the market is not a big thing. All products are instantly visible and available on a global market, which means the noise level that you have to compete with on whatever you publish has raised tremendously. It's just because you're competing against the world and you're competing against world's history. So distribution cost collapses, I just kind of elaborated on that. And the cost structure significantly shifts from heavy sales to digital marketing. And the last but not least thing on this slide, and again, apologies for the eye candy back there, is that a greatly inflated variety of quality and styles meets a largely indifferent audience, which in theory, when you go through your first semester in economy, they tell you it's turning towards a free good, which means that you're not going to make any money with it. So you could ask, like, if you have this, why would anyone be in this industry? Why would you ever want to publish a record? Why would you ever be there? And there's actually research on this. And the research is that this is a research that has been done that compares basically the sales of music, which is here. This is, by the way, physical sales. It's not streaming sales, because streaming sales is like all over the place. And this is the number of releases that have been happening on the US market. So you see that, in fact, even though the number of the total revenue that you're getting from the total sales, or total sales volume goes down, the actual number of releases goes up. And scary part of this is this number here. Again, research here is from Business Wire, so you might want to research that as well. And what it basically tells you that, and this is 2012, so this is like 3 years, kind of 4 years old data. I don't think it's going to change that much. Latest piece of research I could find on it. So basically what it means, an average, if you average it out, like of all sales, the average album in North America actually sold 3,900 copies. The top 10, the sub-top 10 sold 2,200 copies. So this is a disastrous business to be in, even if you're just in North America, the way it was. So I think the most common misconception is that people believe that the music industry is a digital industry. It's not. And what they did here, and again another piece of research from 2015, so that's a little bit newer, is they basically analyzed the cost structure of the labels. And when you look at it at a digital model, your expectation would be that the marketing costs would be exceeding 30% plus, depending on like what kind of market you service and what kind of product you have. For a fully digital product, it should be even above that. When you look at the total cost structure a label today has, you're seeing that 11.4% are the cost of marketing. So basically what we have digitized in the industry so far is the delivery of the music, the physical delivery of the music. We have not digitized beyond that, otherwise we would see a different cost structure for the labels. So, any white noise here? Because I don't really want to paint a doom picture, because it's not a doom picture. But when you talk to people, you find out different solutions to this. So first thing we're going to tell you is like, okay, so if you're looking for money, look at the way that people are spending their money. This is what I did here. So when you look at the total expenditure that people have for music, again, this is research by Nielsen. They basically created like two core groups here, with the teens obviously not having as much money to spend as $80 for the people back there. For the teens, and it's basically for the millennials, it's $163. And you see the majority, the top things here, which almost come up to 50%, is basically based on tours. So people could tell you, you know what, you might not sell any product anymore, you might not sell any music anymore, but you know what, go on tour. Everything's going to be fine. Unfortunately, that's not the case. I'm not sure if any one of you knows Pamplemousse. Nope. No one knows Pamplemousse. It doesn't matter, they have about like 500,000 followers on YouTube, so it's like 500,000. So it's not a small gig. And the guy that actually runs the show there had the courtesy of sharing his latest tour. Actually, this is again a year old, so it's probably not the latest tour, but the tour before that. So they actually did 28 days, 21 gigs. They netted in about like 135. So actually, even a band that has like 500,000 followers on YouTube. Anyone here that has more than 500,000 followers on YouTube? Any artists here at all? I mean,
I have like 20. Not 20 million, 20 million.
Yeah, I think you can do the math. So the question really is like, how do you make money? And obviously that's not the holy grail. At least the way that traditional tour business is done, it's not the holy grail. So there might be money, but you got to be significantly larger. You got to be a Madonna. You got to be one of those guys who are kind of dying away. But you have to be one of those guys that actually has his followers. So next white knight, streaming. Streaming is great. Streaming is growing year over year, depending on who you ask, by 80% to 100%. Great. That's great business. So the thing is that you can say, like, is that only true in Germany? These are German numbers again. Apologies, but these are the most detailed, most current numbers that I got. But it's also there's data from IFPI and from RAIA, in fact, and that actually shows that streaming in the U.S. and this is paid subscription is rising as well. So the one thing that you got to keep in mind is that I just told you that 80 to 100% growth in streaming overall. So out of this, you can easily compute that this is about like 25% growth rate on paid, which is significant. Why is it significant? It's significant because the math on how you're going to get paid is totally different from streaming. And I apologize if I bore some people, but this is mixed up like a lot of times. So, quick question to start with. Riddle me this. So assume you're selling 100,000 copies. So simple math. And it generates about 800 copies, 800K of income for your label. How much will your label make if you sell the same amount the next year under the same terms and conditions through the same channel? Any answers? Probably the same, right? Yeah. Didn't change anything. So it's about 800K. So that was an easy question to start with. That's getting a little more complicated, a little more sophisticated here. So it's about streaming. So assume now on the streaming side. So you sold about 10 million streams. So people stream your track about 10 million times. And that's about the equivalent of a 34 chart, a track like White Tiger. Actually, I used White Tiger data for this here. That basically assume that that peaked out at 34, I think, in the charts. And so it generated 85K of income for you in 2013. What would you make in 2014 if you stream exactly the same amount of streams, so 10 million, assume that your track is so good that it kind of lasts for 2 years, and the streaming revenue, like in Germany did, grew 88%. You're gonna make more, you're gonna make less, you're gonna make the same?
Of course less.
Uh-huh. Why?
Because the total amount of money is to the old artists, and the number of artists is growing.
Absolutely, and that's the thing, and this is one of the key things that you got to keep in mind if you're running a label and you're thinking about streaming revenue and how much that can be used for you to monetize. And the thing is that it's about 82K. I did the math on this track, assuming that because again you're getting a percentage of the total tracks that are played, and since the traffic grew so much, your percentage is a lot smaller. So on top of that, and I did a little bit of calculation in case you guys that like eye candy want to walk through this, but I did the detail behind it, so it's easier to kind of follow if you wanted to do it. Anyways, so what it means is that you're competing with music history, because not only you're competing with the guy next to you on the street in Hamburg, you're not only competing to the latest release of Beyoncé, you're competing with stuff that the Rolling Stones did, that the Beatles did, because all of them are sharing the same bandwidth. So all of a sudden you're competing with catalog, you're competing with history, which is great for the majors that actually have this catalog, which is not so great for the people that want to start up. So revenue share per track. So the reason why this is that the key players in the market, they do a revenue share. So in case of, so a lot of questions sometimes come from the fact that, you know what, I don't really know what I'm going to make on this. And the reason is very simple. Because you're getting a revenue share, like Spotify's giving you 70% of their revenue that they're getting. They're keeping 30% for the service, and the rest is dished out on a pro rata basis for the people that are streamed. So on YouTube, it's actually a little more complicated because they actually give you like 35 to 55% of the total revenue that they're making, not by paid services because YouTube really didn't take off, but by the amount of ads that they actually sell through the people watching something with music in the background at that time. So what do streams actually pay out at this point in time? This is pretty current data. So when you look at it, you see that there's a huge difference between the different streams services that are out there. So which means that you could actually leverage for your own tracks, like what is the premium content that you want to have and what is the thing that you need to basically get access to the market or spread the word. So as you see, Spotify, you need about 279 streams to make $1 for your label. Which means that out of this, on standard deals, you're getting 15%. So this is easy to compute, so it means like for about 1 million streams, you're ending up with anything from 1.2 thousand to 1.5 thousand US. So that's just current data. Again, because the market is dynamic and the revenue situation is changing on a day-to-day basis, this might change. However, you see that the people that are paid out the least, which is YouTube and Spotify here in this case, they actually own the majority of the market. And so you got to keep a very close eye on, like, what is the content that you're rendering where? And so the answer is just make them pay more. I know, they're doing streaming, they're making money, you know, just make them pay more. I mean, YouTube, this is part of Google, right? They have tons of money. The sad news is here, YouTube still does not make any money. So go back to, you can be negotiating with Google like forever. They will tell you that, you know what, we're running the service and we're not making money yet, so why can we dish out, or how can we dish out more even though we're running losses? Second thing they're going to tell you is, you know what, music only represents 4.3% of the total revenue, of the total music clips, of the total streams that YouTube actually does, which is only half the truth. Because there's a lot of videos out there that actually just use leverage music that really need to have a sync deal to kind of back it up. But In the end, for them, it's like, you know what, we have 4.3%, and you know what, it's worse because 98% of YouTube is not licensed. So this whole screaming and shouting at YouTube is pretty much going to get you nothing. Because number one, business is not that important to them. Number two, they covered their ass with their licensing deal that they recently did. Last week, I think they did another one. So Spotify. So if Google doesn't want to give me any more money, like what about Spotify? Spotify's great. I mean, like they have valuations. They want an IPO. That's awesome. So you know, look at their numbers. They're growing in revenue, but the profit. This company is losing money on a massive scale. So what's their inclination to actually give you more money? Because they're giving you 30% of their revenue, not of their profit, of their revenue. So basic mechanics behind this, very simple, is the difference of use, and that's something that you really got to keep in mind when you're thinking about streaming channels. Because when you look at the total estimated amount of users, this is actually data by IFPI, so that's pretty reliable as well. About 38 million users are generating about like 2 billion in terms of revenue, whereas the free users, the 900 million here, they actually generate just 634 million because they're ad supported. So there's a lot less money, and so they're not going to give you that much money. So, and that's the basic problem that we're facing at this point of time. Because we're not a digital business, because we're not leveraging it to a point where we should. So this is like way back then. This is a black and white pictures, which always indicates, surprise, it's old photos, right? These were originally black and white, by the way. I didn't do that on purpose. So you have a lot of people kind of running out, and they have the latest record, everybody gets in and like, yeah, I really wanted to listen to this. And they get their friends together, whatever, and this is how it looks today. So radio music, for the majority of people, became just one more media channel that they either are attending to or not attending to. And you will hear statistics where radio tells you, okay, we have coverage of 57% in the young generation, the older generation, 88% are listening to radio on a daily basis. But everybody, there's analysis on that as well. People in New Zealand really wanted to know, okay, so how much dedicated listening am I getting? And what are people doing while they're listening to radio? And I use radio now, not because I want to smash radio, but it's really the equivalent of people are using, how people are using streaming today. As background, as the chill out, coffee shop kind of music from an acoustic perspective in the afternoon. If that is the value perception. So basically what they did is they reviewed all of this, again the source is down here, and they found out that, this is a couple of years back, that everybody that was listening, even though they had about reach, the dedicated listening they got was about 8 minutes. And I would bet this is halved since then. I don't think that anybody who listens to music from the radio with dedication was doing nothing else. One shaky hand out of I would say 100. All right. But I think that's generally understood. And so and again, I'm not using to slam radio. I'm using this as a general behavior. So what are people doing while they're streaming? What are people doing while they're listening to radio or to music on a non-dedicated basis? So they're talking and chatting. Again, apologies for the eye candy here. Traveling, commuting. They're having a meal. They're drinking. Housework. So they're kind of ironing or kind of whatever. So it's not a lot of attention. So again, they have the same level of value, or the same level of appreciation for you that you have listening to music entering an elevator. Would you pay for that? You probably wouldn't. So here's my other business slide. So again, bear with me just through this business slide. It's a first semester economics business slide here. It's very simple. So it basically just says that there's this accepted price, there's the quantity that you're selling, and basically means that, for example, if you have a pre-release, if you have something exclusive, something with a gold letter on it, some people will be willing to pay more for it, but the more you get down the commodity line, the more people will actually start to adopt the product. But so you're basically not segmenting your product. You basically have like one product for fits all. This one, basically, that if you have a premium product like a CD with a special cover or whatever, then people are willing to pay more for it. And the further you go down here, again, the appreciation is not going to match the price. So this, by the way, is a real chart I took from a project with one of the large publisher on their paywall kind of configuration. So again, what you see here is the likelihood that people will drop off your platform, kind of hitting a special price point like 10 euros or 5 euros here, will actually go down over time, which is logical, because if you raise the price, you're going to have less customers. Very simple. So the problem is, right now, if you equate Spotify with streaming, if you do the segmentation Spotify does on pricing, which is that they have two prices, one all-in and one almost all-in. So you kind of lower the price to the least common denominator, so you're basically making a price for everyone that would be paid by everyone that doesn't have any appreciation of what you have to offer. So basically what you have is you have one price, which is the subscription price, and then you have the pre-price where you're not going to make any money apart from the little bit of advertising money that I talked to you about a little earlier on. Another study that actually talks about like how can you leverage this, how can you segment, how do you understand where to seed and where to monetize. And there's a study that Nielsen brought out, I think it was 2014, that they estimate there's an additional 2.6 billion in terms of revenue, which doubles the revenue of the total music business on the recording side so far. And what they did is they also asked like what people would be willing to actually pay for in addition to what they have for just accessing or having availability to the music or the content assets. And that actually splits out to a large group of people that have a totally different level of appreciation for music. And what that is like everybody's paying more? No. When you look at the total use of music, you see that the total use of aficionados and digital fans only represents about like 27%, whereas the total payment that they make for the total what they're listening to is they actually pay more than 50% of the whole show. And the thing is that you got to come up with ways to allow people to show their appreciation for your music, for your digital content, in a monetary way, because that's what the business is all about. And I'm talking about money here, not about everything else in art. So in Germany, that's actually worse. In Germany, it means that 4.9% of all people actually generate more than 50% of the total revenue of the industry. But we don't give them opportunity to actually pay more. Because we give them, Spotify, $9.99, that's what you get everything. So even if they wanted, they wouldn't have the opportunity because we don't deliver the product at this stage that actually cater to those specific segments. And don't mistake streaming replacing for audio content. Because when you look at, and I did a little bit of analysis here, when these are the long play charts in 2015, and you see like it's headed up by Helene Fischer, and then Adele comes in, Sarah Connor, Helene Fischer against Naidoo. And when you compare this data, this is the top albums in Germany. When you compare this data, and again, I read it not because I don't assume that you can. I don't assume that you can't read, but it's just because it's a little tiny here. You will only find this is the streaming, the total streams. I got this directly from Spotify. And so when you look at those, you see that out of those 10 albums that are out here, that by the way made a lot of money, you will only find 2 artists that are on the top streaming all the first 25 tracks that you have here. And by the way, and because we don't get the numbers out of them reliably, we did an estimate here how much actually studies that were behind that based on the amount of platinums and diamonds that they got. So the next thing is, so before you can monetize music, before you can actually have a fan base that is willing to give you more for what you have, before you can do that, they got to discover you. And when you look at the way, and this is data from 2015 from Nielsen, this is how people discover music today. And again, feel free to replace radio by streaming, because that's the way that people are using it. And so basically we'll find that radio, i.e. streaming, friends, relatives, movies are the top things that kind of drive people to discover the music that you offer or the products that you have to offer in general. And this is the truth, which is a big opportunity. And I encourage you, every one of you, to kind of look at this Artist Explorer, Spotify.com. Because the one thing that you can leverage out there that used to be in the hands of the major record companies is the data that the streaming companies make available for you for free, mostly. And when you do this, like for example, this one here, specifically when you do about recommendation, we talk about like how do people find you, how do people discover you and your music. The question is like, what does it relate to? Like, does it sound like Seed? Does it sound like Nirvana? Does it sound like, who does it sound like, to get an idea? Like if that is something that they would like, for example, if you would do this kind of stuff on my stuff, you would probably end up with Depeche Mode or something else. Anyway, but the thing is that this thing here, what it does, it basically gives you, this is a free API, you can use it today, this is a little bit of Python in the background, a little bit of JavaScript on the front end, and what it does, it basically gives you, like all artists, how they are related, and this is a recommendation path for you. Use APIs, it's an API's API as well, it's not about like hiring people and manpower, it's about being smart about the assets that are out there. What does this buy you? I mean, this is a great example out of last week, actually, so this is pretty fresh. The Neil Cowley trio, anybody heard about the Neil Cowley trio? No, that's what I assume. They are in the jazz genre, if there's something like genre left, right? And so typically what they have is they see sales of any tracks like 166, 107, 9,300. That suggests that because it's not massive downloads like the top 10 or the top 100 charts on Spotify. So you see this one's sticking out here. It's like 2 million. So they wrote a song, and the song's called Grace. And for a jazz track, this is 2 million streams in 3 weeks. This is outrageous. What happened? It's when you look at the genre thing, like in radio you have like jazz genres, you have like jazz radio stations or what have you. Here it is like, what kind of mood are people in there listening to? The only thing that happened here, and this guy wrote a really good blog entry on this, if you want to kind of take away like what is it that you need to do in order to be surfacing. And what it is basically, they were part of a thing called Peaceful Piano. And this is a Spotify playlist. And the impact that he saw out of this is actually that the record sales or the stream sales that he did actually multiplied by 20. And this is the effect that you have just by being not cornered in a story, in a corner, by just being put into the wrong genre, but actively working the APIs that you can that you can have. Do you know this guy? Probably not. I didn't know him either, so no reason to feel sorry. Probably a little small to that side here. This guy is called Brent Morgan, and Brent Morgan is a guy that does like 2 web shows every day. And the interesting thing is, there's tons of guys that do like this, but he's actually leveraged some of the platforms, and he's actually making 10K a month broadcasting his music. 10K a month, just to put this in perspective. If you have, this is roughly the equivalent of 2,000 CDs a year at a major level, at a major label, not level, level. At a major label. So basically, this is 2 gold, and he's making this amount of money with his radio show. How does he do it? I just told you that you cannot make any money on touring anymore. Which, this is half the truth. Because the key thing in making real money in the industry, to make sure that a content piece which was generated once is actually leveraged by the people to the level of appreciation that they have and being paid for to that level. And what this guy does, he basically uses and this gives listeners an opportunity to basically listen in and give him money while he's playing, because making requests. So it's like a one-to-end communication that is initiating, sir. So the scaling effectiveness is not done through multiplying CDs or delivering more streams to the service. It's by adding, again, at 0 cost, because it doesn't matter if you're catering to 10,000 to 100,000 listeners at that point of time. The scaling is done through reach versus copies. So, why is this guy coming up with this vacuum cleaner slide? So, where does it stop? The truth is it doesn't. When you look at this, I just took this morning a slide from Amazon, and you think about creativity, how people are remixing, how people are reproducing what is actually digital in your world. You would think like if you're looking for a new nozzle for your vacuum cleaner to make sure that your keyboard is clean as well as the floor was when you used the broad nozzle a while ago, you would go to Amazon and basically order something. This is the state of the industry that you have in the music industry today. So you have electronic delivery, or like a common channel where you deliver goods. But when you go to Thingiverse, you actually find this nozzle to be downloadable. So you can just download your nozzle, and then you print it at home, and then you put it up your... So this business for vacuum cleaner nozzles is going to go away in 5 years. And it's physical objects. We're not talking about like digital listening, we're talking about... And the next thing people are going to do is this. They're going to go like, oh, that was a great nozzle, but I really want to remix this. So they're going in and remixing the nozzle to something that is applicable to the very specific application, and then they print it at home. And then there goes your, and so the question is like, how will that be monetized in the future? Because again, there's some initial invention. Does a nozzle actually fit that path, or fit that bill, or not? So I think my key thing here is not to sell you vacuum nozzles here. My key thing here is that it will not stop at any point. As soon as something gets digitized, all the mechanics that we just talked about will actually hit the industry. And the same thing happens in the 3D print industry. And just to give you an idea about this, before I went out here, I took one of those out from our office printers here. And this is just a model thing that I did that you can play around with in case you're stressed. But anyway, so all of this is going to, the physical object is going to become digital as well. So takeaways, because I think I'm running out of time before I'm taking questions here. Takeaways is, number one, there's good money to be made. There's a lot of money in the industry, and as soon as you give your audience the opportunity to buy the right product from you, there will be money for you as well. But I think it's important, and it's absolutely important, understand the consumption and buying behavior of your audience. And the consumption is not, I download the stream from my latest track from Spotify, from Deezer, or whatever service you're using. Understand, like, what are the things that you could actually sell as part of this? There's one guy that had a tremendous idea. He basically had a release party. He's running a hip-hop label out of Los Angeles. So he had a release party, and he actually sold a seat on the private jet where the release party was happening at 5,000 K a pop. This thing was kind of sold out in 20 minutes. He made like 50 grand on it. And again, I'm not suggesting that you should dump all your creative kind of an artist kind of. I'm just saying that think about like the reachability and how you can actually do this. Define valuable content, and I think it's important that a lot of artists think that the latest release that they worked on for a year is the only piece of valuable content that they have. It's not. Even releasing 5 days before you actually do the official release on one of the premium channels, or releasing a CD prior to the channel, or releasing it after, whatever, it always gives you kind of abilities to create a new product, either on the timeline, or you just have live streams from your studio, or whatever. Just think about the content that people would be interested in. Ask the people that you work with or that are your fans, like, what are the things you'd like to see from me? And then basically produce that, and then assign content to each phase of the discovery to monetization. So one of the ideas you could have, I'm not saying it's working for everybody, but one of the things you could say is like, okay, Spotify is a seeding mechanism for me, right? I want to use Spotify to actually get reach, to be discovered by people that are that listen to music that is similar to what I'm doing. So the question here is like, should I really put out my latest CD single, the biggest hit that I have, and make that part of Spotify? Your answer could be yes. Make that free to actually drag along the things that you only sell physical. Segment the market. Leverage streaming's API to the max. Because the APIs, and just look at the stuff that Spotify and Deezer have for you, it will probably cater for 90% of whatever you need, if you do a little bit of JavaScript scripting, or have a friend that can do that. And automate. And this, I don't want to come across as someone that doesn't appreciate the artistic side of it, because I do. I'm doing this myself. But right now I'm only focusing on the way how you actually get the things you deserve from the great stuff that you're producing. And that's kind of the end of my presentation. And I'm open for questions. If you want to write down my email, just send me an email. I'm more than happy to respond to some of the requests and questions that you might have going forward. Any questions? No, I made them all asleep. No? If I give the person that asks the first question a t-shirt.
What t-shirt?
That was a good question.
Is there any numbers how the percentage of money spent on music is like developing in terms of you have to compete against cinema, games? I think games are getting more and more.
Yes, there's a great published report by the German government on this. And if you send me an email, I'll shoot you the link.
Okay.
Any other questions? Anybody asleep? Anything? No? Then I don't have to wish for good dreams, and I hope you have a great rest of the show. And hopefully I wasn't too boring, and I have a reputation of speaking too fast, so apologies for that as well. So have a great day, and thanks a lot for stopping by.